episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by Restoration Brokers of America. Did you know that 80% of businesses are unsellable? Let RBA work with you to ensure you maximize the value of your business when you decide it's time for a change. You've worked hard to build it, let RBA work hard to sell it. Visit sellmyrestorationbusiness.com for more information. Hello there. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I am joined by some friends from the north, although I'm in the north, but they're even further north than I am, just slightly. I am joined by Russ Jacobs and Jamie Sands. They're both from Esporta, which is a Canadian company, but they have a huge presence in the US as well, not just in Canada. And they focus on contents restoration, specifically on the textile side. I'm going to let them tell you a little bit more about it, but we wanted to talk about kind of the push that our society and world is going through now of being more sustainable practices and learning to maybe reduce our carbon footprint, restoring items versus replacing them, kind of the direction that we're going that's helping preserve and restore things versus just replacing all the time. So gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to toss it maybe over to Russ first to kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background in the industry.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us. My background goes way back. I started out in the retail dry cleaning industry. I was a third generation retail dry cleaner working at my grandmother's place when I was 10 years old. Got into retail dry cleaning ownership, and then in the early 90s, started doing soft content restoration for the insurance industry. After that, I became full-time in soft contents restoration. Back then, before the days of national companies, you just had retail dry cleaners that did that, but I saw this as a standalone business. And then after doing it as an independent for over 15 years, joined one of the national dry cleaning companies and was a franchise there. Once I sold my franchise, went to work for inventory packout software for 5 years, and then the last 5 years with Esporta as Director of Customer Development.
Perfect. All right. And Jamie, share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry roughly 16 years. Prior to my experience at Esporta Wash Systems, I was with a pack-out inventory software company as well. Although I did compete against Russ, we were in the same realm. So that was roughly 5 years, and 11 years with Esporta. So Vice President of Sales here, work with Russ on engaging opportunities with individuals and contractors on the Esporta technology.
Perfect. So obviously both of you have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to contents restoration, all of those things, but share a little bit about Esporta for people who are listening that maybe haven't heard of your name or don't know about your big washers that you create, all of that stuff. So talk a little bit about your technology so that people understand the direction we're going and where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's a very unique story. It started roughly 24 years ago, and it started with our CEO, Randy Rode, and his wife, Margie Rode, looking for a solution to actually clean big and bulky hockey equipment. And as you mentioned on the phone, from Canada, although Russ is in Memphis, so he's not totally Canadian yet, but that's really where the founding part of our company was built. And it really lended itself to understand that there is many limitations in the typical agitation front load washing machines that were available in the marketplace on many different fronts. And our company has actually gone through many evolutions as far as again, sports equipment to PPE, fire department, fire bunker gear cleaning, military, and then roughly in 2007, 2008. We saw a fantastic opportunity in the disaster restoration space. One of the founding parts of our technology based on agitation versus hydraulic pressure, but it's the ability to clean mold and sewage with third-party verification and testing. So a little bit of the story, a little bit of the history, and currently we've got roughly 300 locations in the US and about 210 in Canada. We also are over in the UK, Scotland, Ireland, Australia, and even have some partners even further into Europe. So that's a little bit about our story.
So how many restoration companies in the US have Esporta machines as part of their contents division? I feel like textiles, a lot of times restorers are subbing them out, have other companies that are getting the textiles and restoring them and then bringing them back to the client. So are you finding that it's more of a trend that people are bringing this in-house?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say 98% of our contractors in the US are, content specific, restoration specific companies that are adding an additional division to be that one source, single source for contents and all restoration as well. So as far as standalones, not a ton, but again, we focus directly on empowering restoration companies to bring this division in-house.
So what can be what is the overall, I guess, take by carriers or adjusters when it comes to restoring textiles? Is that a yay or a nay? Are they in favor of? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let Russ jump in on this too, more being on the ground and working directly with, a lot of companies of ours that deal with insurance companies and adjusters. And the time has come where now the recognition of restoring versus replacement is so critical, and using the right technology and the right training, because you don't want to be stepping into something and not having the right training and background and understanding. And as Russ's accolades as he came onto the call, it's very, very in depth, and that's one of the huge value pieces of our organization is Russ Jacobs having the amount of time in the industry, as well as Daryl Nestivo and other members of our team.
Yeah.
But that we've seen a tremendous shift, and Russ, maybe jump in a little bit on that.
Yeah, what we're seeing and the way that it has evolved, and there's actually out in the insurance community some myths that a lot of us, it's our job to be able to relate to both a homeowner and an adjuster the value of restoration. Adjusters might think that homeowners would just rather buy new clothing. Well, homeowners like to add clothing to their wardrobe, but we all have things in our closets that we've had for a long time that we don't get rid of. And then there's also the myth that, well, restoration is just as expensive. I may as well take that money and buy all new clothing. Well, it's not. And we're going to talk more about when we talk about profit and margins. To restore an item is usually less than 20% of its value, and in many cases, much less. And so the value of restoration over replacement and enabling homeowners to get back to their pre-loss condition using their contents money is all areas that carriers are recognizing. Again, when we talk about the carbon footprint, not having to replace and what that does to the environment. So everything in our industry is now kind of lined up to where the technology, the restoration percentages, the restoration costs, and the damage of replacement, both from a customer service and from an environmental standpoint, is making this easy to present, to be able to show the value of it. And so we're seeing a large increase in opportunities for our operators.
I know that there are a lot of restorers also going toward like higher net worth clientele now. So where does this type of contents restoration fit into that piece? Like you're going into a home that maybe had a fire, and you're not talking about, clothes that are bought at Target, which are just fine, but maybe you're talking about Valentino, or you're talking about Gucci or something like that. How can those be restored? What does that look like? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing is really determining the differences between the traditional agitation method that everyone's accustomed to at their home with, very aggressive in nature, and the technology of the Esporta really is very delicate but very powerful in how it works and pushes water and environmentally friendly detergents through all those different types of items like leathers and shoes and belts and purses, Chanel, wedding dresses, cowboy hats, cowboy saddles. The technology really can do a very wide range of those types of items that typically would be deemed non-restorable. And so to Russ's point, we're finding a very large success rate when it comes to insurance company adoption, because they're really understanding, well, first of all, the environmental impact, but secondly, having to have the emotional discussions with homeowners to do the evaluation of saying, listen, hey, I'm going to give you, $75 for that jacket that you may have spent 300 on it, but based on depreciation, this is what you're going to be allowed. And that's a very, very emotional and stressful conversation for adjusters to have. So if our operators can restore up to 98% of the items impacted by, category 1, 2, 3, mold, significant smoke and soot, biocontamination, everything of that degree, it's really accomplishing a couple different things, again, with the adjuster and the acceptance there, but as well as the environmental impact of restoring and not replacing. So the technology, without getting extremely deep, a lot of people just don't simply believe it, but once they see it, they touch it and they feel it. I mean, I think last time we spoke, there's many stories where, myself personally been out on site and restoring sentimental wedding dresses that belonged to a homeowner's daughter who had been deceased, and it was covered in mold. And just simply having the ability to restore it and prove through scientific testing of the ATP testing device, field testing, that it can be restored. So it's a wide variety in what our technology and our operators can restore. And I think that's what's really important, is that obviously we are the owner of the technology, but our operators are simply what make us and create the company that we are today.
It's an interesting dynamic that with the improvement in the technology to be able to take items like that in the past could only be surface cleaned, which limited both the types of items and the types of losses that could be restored with that surface cleaning method, right? But when you're able to clean it in an immersion process that is both better but more gentle, then it opens up the ability to clean those types of items. And what we find through experience is it's not just for that high-end homeowner, that certain demographic, because the number one category that Americans spend disposable income is on clothing. And so everyone, regardless of their median income, will buy things that are important to them, that are special to them, that are expensive. It's just that the higher end demographic has more of them. But we see these opportunities and these types of items on almost every claim, just depends on the number. And when you're able to do that, it doesn't matter whether the homeowner has 10 designer purses or one.
Yep.
It's just as important to each one that you're able to restore that. So it's a great opportunity.
Yes.
And also, Michelle, just to add, I mean, through training. So again, I have to really reinforce the fact that, through training is why, again, our operators, coupled with our technology, have the ability to do, high-end, high-heel Jimmy Choo shoes, or, Uggs. I mean, for most of America that have Uggs other than Canadians, but it's through training and through best practices. And that's where, us as an organization, roughly, 4 or 5 years ago, we really evolved the way that we train. And that is a critical point to make, that on how we teach and how we train.
Okay, so let's talk about margins. Russ, you teased it up a little bit. So let's talk about that now. Like, what kind of margins are there in textile restoration specifically, especially when you're thinking about, like, all right, there's going to be an initial investment potentially on some equipment here, but you can probably build that ROI back in pretty quickly. So what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. The ROI, and it's interesting because we get data from our operators. This isn't us, but the average operator repays their entire initial investment in less than a year. Very, very quick return on your investment. Then from a standpoint of ongoing profit and margins, there's two ways to look at it. From a variable expense standpoint, soft contents processing is extremely profitable. We are seeing margins of 65, 70, as much as 80%. A lot of that will go back to training and how we can make sure that their productivity is as efficient as possible, of course. But the margins on soft contents, because it takes up very little space in your warehouse, but adds a tremendous amount of revenue. According to Xactimate, on a typical fire pack out, the soft contents are the highest percentage by item and by billing than any other category. So there's a tremendous amount of revenue that's brought in. It's the same dynamic that the fast food industry had with upsizing. Going to a home and packing out a certain number of contents is profitable, but when you can add a whole nother revenue stream, it's even more profitable. If you bring in fixed expenses that are normally covered by your hard content division, your water mitigation, your recon, well, now every division is more profitable. So the rising tide lifts all boats. And our operators are looking at a limited amount of square footage, adding a tremendous amount of revenue, bringing every bit of your square footage profit up on all divisions. Jamie, you can add to that as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, and again, I mean, that's extremely accurate, and most of the data, if not all the data that we receive is through working with our network, and our IS machines are connected to the internet. So we have the opportunity to pull wash data and really understand the true hard costs when it comes to detergent usage on a per machine basis. So the information and margins that we do profitability analysis with our current operators is very accurate. And that's one thing, again, we stand on the data and the training and technology that we have. And the other unique thing too is that through Xactimate, doing the reporting Xactware, I mean, you look at the soft contents, typically represents 30 to 32% of the overall items from a single family home. So it's whether people are doing it now, yes, it's great from a profitability standpoint. A lot of people may think that it's kind of challenging to get into, but again, that's why we really reinforce it's great profit, great additional revenue, makes you a single source, one-stop shop, and our training and dynamic there is second to none. So there's a little sales pitch on the Esporta side.
That's all right. Are most of your contractors using Xactimate for their estimates and their invoicing, or are some of them using T&M? What does that look like?
Yeah,
Russ, go ahead.
vast majority are using Xactimate.
Okay.
The challenge there is using it correctly.
Sure.
And so we definitely work with, soft contents is a difficult, literally in Xactimate, there's over 1,000 line items for soft content. So I compare it to alcohol. Used moderately, it's great, but it can be abused. And so again, when we want to get to the profitability, we're all in favor of everyone maximizing a bill and getting what they should get. What we do is to try to show people that the final number is not as important as the construction of the bill and that it's balanced.
Yep.
And so Xactimate is what you see on literally, I would say 98% of claims. And so that's what we train on.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so let's move into the topic that we kind of talked about offline, and reducing carbon footprint. That's definitely something that I've heard more of. I know more restorers are trying to do that, trying to be a little bit more conscious of the environment, of how much fuel they're using, whatever that may be. I think it's funny, even apps now, like I use the Thanks app, the THNKS app, and there's an option on there to reduce your make this carbon neutral. And if you click that, then you pay an extra few cents, and it somehow makes my little e-blast gift carbon neutral. I don't know how, because it's an e-blast, but they do it. I don't know. So explain a little bit of what being carbon neutral means and how you're seeing maybe restorers specifically getting more interested in that.
Yeah, it's interesting on that. We learned from one of our operators in Ontario, very interesting what they do is they're actually planting trees for every claim that they do. So there's other, companies are really getting ahead of that mindset of carbon, trying to become, net zero carbon. What is the carbon footprint doing? What is it leaving? Whether it's moving your vehicles to, different types of fuel sources, whatever that may be. But where we've really zeroed in and have spent a lot of time through our R&D is understanding our water consumption, understanding, what we've spoken about today, real comparison between the typical traditional agitation washing machines, how much water they use on a per liter per pound basis versus what we do. And we've got some statistics that we can share. Other topics are detergents as well too. Our detergents are environmentally friendly. They're automatically injected into the wash cycle based on the recipe that's selected of that specific and precise chemistry. And they're hyperallergenic as well too. So, the technology of the actual operation inside of the machine is one. Two is being the Esporta detergents that, again, the environmental impact and wastewater. Again, we're in multiple different countries around the world, and we've had zero, pushback as far as our disposal. Energy consumption, again, if we can minimize how much we're using and running a wash because we're restoring more, as well as our capacity is between 100 and 160 pounds per wash. And so really minimizing that. Again, the restoration versus replacement, and then obviously the types of items that can be restored, without having to, it was interesting, Russ, you can talk a little bit about this, but very interesting, the impact. I mean, a lot of buying now is done online, which we understand, but if you're buying online and you're having to replace something, there's a lot of impact that goes in from whether it's the packaging or whether it's the delivery services or whether it's you are driving, to a different type of retail place to purchase something. So there's a lot of minimization of by restoring and replacing. So Russ, maybe jump in a little bit more on that.
Well, and one of the most important factors, and most people don't even know this because it applies to your washer at home as well. And when we're dealing with soft contents that have been in a loss, the natural assumption is that we're going to need a more aggressive process, a longer process. We're going to have to use warm water, hot water. Because of the technology and the hydraulic cleaning action that the Esporta has, it goes through all layers through hydraulic water pressure, which is like when you're wading out into the ocean and you see a wave and it goes around you and through you, you feel that pressure. Well, because of that, then we can use cold water temperatures. So regardless of the water consumption, whether it's the Esporta, a commercial washer, a washer at home, depending on your geographic area, 60 to 90% of the energy consumed in every single load is heating up water. And so when we can use cold water washes, then that dramatically reduces the carbon footprint. And this is something that, even our operators, the general public can do at home whenever possible. We just don't realize, even choosing that warm water cycle, how much that adds to the energy consumption.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, so what is the next step for restorers who are listening to this thinking, okay, I have a contents division, but I only do maybe hard contents right now, or I don't have a contents division at all, but I know this is a direction that I need to go. Where do things start when it comes to contents?
Yeah, I mean, the first initial step is just having a conversation and really doing an evaluation of their business and really, understanding and helping people understand the industry and the shift that's been made. Whether you understand it or not, the restoration dry cleaning franchise organizations are no longer a standalone restoration dry cleaner. They're moving further and further into other areas of contents. And that in its own is a massive shift in the industry and how things are changing. So whether you're doing just hard goods and subbing out soft goods, that's something you need to look at, how often you're doing, and really take care of your own business. As far as the technology is, again, we do an evaluation. How many pack outs a month may you consider? And then we can do profitability analysis. And again, can be a long cycle, can be a short cycle. And we really, again, just really want to be doing that first initial conversation. Facility layouts and designs, really show that this can be done within a 700 to 800 square foot section of a facility. So it's not an overwhelming with our technology to get into. And visiting with our operators. I mean, again, we really pride ourselves on our operators. Our success is determined by their success. And so connecting, people who are interested in with our operator network is obviously a critical step in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what about training? How long does it take to train up to be able to appropriately, accurately do soft contents well and know what you're doing, use machines well, all of that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's my area. And, we look at soft content restoration, and it's funny because restoration contractors are scared of it in some ways, but soft contents processors were scared of hard contents too. Each one has their own unique set of challenges, and we would joke with people but if you're washing a plate of grandma's china and you drop it, we know what happens. But if you drop a jacket, you just pick it up. So with the technology and how easy it is to use and train on, with the trends just in the workplace where more and more people are dressing casually, we're not seeing some of the types of items that are more challenging. With the training where it's not that specialty or niche market, relatively anyone can do it. And if you think about it, we wash clothes at home. So we can take anyone who has any experience in just simply washing their own items and train them how to be a soft contents processor. So the challenge of it is in doing it efficiently, and how can we add this extra division to make our company that, like Jamie has said, that one-stop shop. So the homeowner only has one point of contact, the adjuster has one point of contact. Now we can better focus on what we do to create that customer experience which is the most important part. And whether it's that designer purse you talked about, or a wedding gown, or a sentimental christening gown, everything else is just stuff. And being able to show people how to restore people back to their pre-loss condition is where a lot of that comes into play. But the logistics of processing things now are different, and it's not that hard. It really isn't. We can train someone in less than 2 weeks how to start being a soft contents processor.
Okay.
And Michelle, I think too, since we moved everything into an online learning management system, that's really driven people, whether it's their smartphone, tablets, computer, or even right on our machinery, we have access to our training. We also do in-person regional training events, typically once a quarter, and then, once every 6 weeks, we do webinar training as well too, globally. But yeah, I mean, to Russ's point, I mean, within a week to 2 weeks, we're able to really communicate. And then we have ongoing training and support. So this isn't just a, transactional, here you go, get going. It's, how do you market better? We just did last week, we did a sales and marketing session with a very well-known company, Stanley Restoration. Michelle, Rob Reynolds.
Yeah.
And came in and really highlighted, and we had tremendous success with that, and just sharing his feedback on what marketing tactics work for him. And so again, it's an ongoing basis, and it's something, again, that we really focus on and make sure our ongoing training is there and accessible.
Okay, so before we wrap it up, I would love for both of you to share a story, maybe from one of your contractor partners, of a memorable restoration project that's happened, maybe an item that got restored after an interesting loss or something like that. Like, there's got to be stories that come to both of your minds instantly of something that's like, this is why we do this. So I don't know who wants to start, but I would love to hear your stories.
Well, I'll start because Jamie thinks slower than me. So Rob Reynolds, he was talking about, had a claim, and he had been marketing his soft contents division for weeks. Well, literally, this was one of those lost sites that the roof wasn't even there. And it was that high-end demographic that you spoke about earlier. And no other company that came in and looked at these items said, it's all non-salvage, we can't do anything. And she was upset, especially about this $3,000 Chanel purse that they had bought in Italy on their 20th or 30th year anniversary trip. And she didn't want the money. She wanted the purse. And Rob basically said, you know what, we'll do it. And he went in, restored it to like new condition. Not only was she thrilled with the results, and he got to do the rest of her items, the insurance carrier was so impressed that one claim, and more specifically, the most important part of that one claim being that one purse, led to over $2 million worth of soft content revenue for him in the next 2 years. So you never know. We're doing it so that we can restore someone back to their pre-loss condition and give her something that goes beyond just a restoration. But then it definitely was a huge benefit to him because of what he was able to do. So that's the one that always comes to mind for me.
That's amazing. I love that. All right, Jamie.
Yeah, I'll share it on a little bit more of a sentimental level. Typically when I deal with people who are interested in our technology, it could be a transition of a month, or sometimes it could be 5, 6, 7 years. Depending on and my persistence and how I build relationships. But this one story, I was actually out on a site, and it was in Ohio. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. Walked in on site, and we were doing some training and working with the operator, and they had just a ton of stuff out in the facility. And I looked over in one of these, Tupperware containers, big Tupperware, and I just said, "Oh, hey, what's in there? What's going on?" They said, "Well, don't open that. That's a wedding dress, and it's got a bunch of mold on it, and so we have to throw it out, and we have to non-sell it." And I said, "Well, is there, what's the story behind it?" Well, the gal I was working with said, "You know what? It's pretty sad that the homeowner actually had a loss at her house and had this in her basement, and obviously water and mold, and over time, but this wedding dress actually had belonged to her daughter, who had passed away about 7 months prior to her loss."
Mm.
And so it was very sentimental to her. And I said, well, you know what, let's do this. We're going to do it. So we did some pre-soaking, pre-treatment, pre-testing, and we put it onto the Esporta mold wash. And then we did some post-testing. But what we did is we contacted the adjuster and we contacted the homeowner, didn't tell them anything. And we actually laid it out in the boardroom table, with some photos of the pre and the post testing, just obviously to show and verify that it was clean. And I'll tell you, I get goosebumps even just saying the story. I mean, the impact of when the adjuster and the homeowner walked in and she was just absolutely melting into tears. And, that was like 7-8 years ago. I mean, stories like that, they do not leave you. And I think, again, it's that impact. And our operators are doing this all the time. And it's such a unique situation that we get to be a part of and we get to share. And again, that's the passion that we have. And that's how our organization's built, and we continue to grow.
It is interesting when you think about soft contents. Like, I think I have more sentimental things that are in the soft contents category than the hard contents. I don't have like my grandma's china or anything like that. That's maybe something that isn't as popular now, but I think of like my kids' blankets and their buddy stuffed animals, and then purses and things like that. That's really wedding dresses. That there's so much value in those things that's unspoken value, maybe not even monetary value. So great opportunity for restorers for sure. All right. Anything else that either of you want to add before we wrap it up?
Just thank you. And I think, again, if anyone's considering moving in this direction, we're very like-minded and just want to understand, what position your business is in. And I know that a lot of the times people really want to chase the work that's out there, large loss, whatever that may be. You still have to take care of your home and your home base. And if you can maximize your revenue per claim, I think that's a critical way to do it, and use technology and use training and support to do it. And that's what we're here to be partner with. So.
Yep. And I would just add that, in this industry, we've seen a lot of changes. Esporta has been predicting some of these changes. And if you're even considering it, well, if you're not, you should. The window of opportunity to be proactive is closing, and a lot of contractors, as they see the direction that it's going, are going to have to be reactive. You don't want to be in that position. And we're just simply here to help with that. Very, very much like Jamie said, ours is not a transactional relationship. It's an ongoing working together. If you're successful, we're successful relationship. So just reach out. Never hurts to talk about it. And we'll be the first to tell you that, this is something that you're going to feel like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope you both have a great rest of your day.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.